Hello everyone, my name is Borbála Körmendy and I am an ENT resident at Bajcsy-Zsilinszky Hospital. As you can see, most of my projects have something to do with cholesteatoma, which is a disease in which a small amount of squamous epithelium gets into the middle ear, starts expanding, and destroys the structures in its path, such as the vestibular system, the hearing ossicles, or the skull itself, which can lead to potentially life-threatening consequences, such as vertigo, cranial nerve palsies, or large neck abscesses. In my first project, we were investigating the congenital form of this disease, which we are staging using the POD6 staging system, which is currently one of the most popular staging systems that we use for congenital cholesteatoma. It is a very rare disease, so we feel it is really important for clinicians to have an evidence-based staging system to be able to correctly gauge prognosis, plan surgeries, and be able to compare the results of these surgeries on a multi-institutional level. So our aim was, in this project, to assess whether the POD6 staging system for congenital cholesteatoma was indeed the right tool to assess prognosis. Our population was all patients with congenital cholesteatoma, and we were comparing the stages to each other, and our outcome was residual disease, which means that a small amount of squamous epithelium, cholesteatoma tissue, is left over in the middle ear, which can then lead to new growth and, again, the other consequences. During our search and selection process, we have found roughly 6,000 articles, which we narrowed down to 13 articles, which we included in the systematic selection, in the systematic review section, and 7 articles that we have included in our meta-analysis. During the statistical analysis, we have come up with this forest plot. You see that we have that our clinical question was whether the proportion of residual disease is different in the 4 stages of the staging system. What we have found during our statistical analysis is that we have very wide confidence intervals and high p-values, although we also had very low event numbers when it comes to our total patient number. So what we can say based on this forest plot is that there is no statistically significant difference between the 4 stages. This can mean 2 things. Either the POD6 staging system is unfortunately not as good as a tool for congenital cholesteatoma staging as we thought it was, or something that we have already also found during our risk of bias analysis is that there's a really high risk of bias, so maybe the reporting is not as good as we thought it was. What we have found in basically all of the articles that we have included in our meta-analysis is that there was no reporting on what happened to the people who didn't, for the patients who were not followed up all the way through, and also there was no uniform way of staging the patients. So basically our conclusion at the end of this project is that based on the readily available data on the POD6 staging system in the contemporary literature, we are not able to gauge whether this is the right staging system to use for all clinicians. I'm very glad to say that a few days ago, this manuscript has been accepted in one of the best European ENT journals. And also on LinkedIn, we have been contacted by one of the members of the International Pediatric Otolaryngology group, who have contributed as a first author in the recommendation for managing congenital cholesteatoma with an intent to cite us in one of their upcoming works. So we are very excited. My next project, which we have completed based on the patient data available at my workplace in Bajcsy-Zsilinszky Hospital, is seeking answers in another newly arisen dilemma in otologic surgery, which is whether using endoscope to intraoperatively control hard-to-see areas within the middle ear during cholesteatoma surgery is worth the extra time and effort. As you can see, traditionally, microscopes were the best technology to use for cholesteatoma surgery. But with the new development of endoscopic technology, very good quality endoscopes have also become available in the operating room for controlling the hard-to-see areas of the middle ear, such as the facial recess or the sinus tympani. The difference between these two methods is that microscopes only offer a line of sight vision, whereas with endoscopes, we can actually control the areas that we want to see. And what we have found during this project is that in as high a rate as 50%, we have found leftover cholesteatoma tissue in these hard-to-control areas in seemingly healthy middle ears of patients who were operated on using microscopes. In this project, we have also completed a manuscript, and soon we are going to be submitting it to the European Archives of Otorhinolaryngology. My third project, one of my most recent projects, is dealing with cholesteatoma follow-up. So unfortunately, in cholesteatoma, recidivism is quite high. So it is crucial to follow up these patients to see that they are continuing to be healthy after surgery. The contemporary method for doing this is using a cholesteatoma dedicated MRI protocol, which is called diffusion weight imaging, which is really great for us because, as you can see in the picture, congenital cholesteatoma tissue basically lights up in these pictures. So our aim with this project was to determine the correct duration, but also the correct timing of these follow-ups. What we are hoping to show in our project is direct and indirect growth. In the indirect growth group, we have patients who had more than one dedicated MRI protocols, so we can see the actual cholesteatoma tissue growing in their middle ears. What we're also hoping to show is indirect growth, which is we know the timing of their surgery when we presume they have very little or almost no cholesteatoma tissue left over, and then we have a later imaging that was taken under that they have gone under, and we also know the size of their residual cholesteatoma that was in the middle ear. And based on the timing of these imaging protocols, we are hoping to tell when, how long, and when these patients should undergo their own MRI protocol, their own MRI examinations. During our preliminary research, we have already found several articles that have the data that we need, but we also started a systematic search during which we have started from around 10,000 articles, and now we are roughly 50% through the abstract title selection, and so far we have found 73 eligible articles. We are hoping to make a quick progress with this project also, and I'm hoping to present the data that we have found, the results that we have found on the next progress report. So thank you so much for your attention, and I'm excitedly awaiting your questions.
Thank you very much. I have one question about your third project. You mentioned that DWI is the way to go in the imaging department. My question is when they determine if it's a cholesteatoma or not, do they use quantitative data from the DWI or just qualitatively yes or no answer do they tell you about?
Thank you for your question. I'm really excited to hear from a specialist. To my knowledge, they only use qualitative data based on the sequences of the MRI, and basically we are working with head and neck specialists who diagnose a lot of cholesteatoma, and we are reading their results.
Because theoretically, in questionable cases, these DWI techniques, if you use the ADC map, you can directly measure some kind of value about how good those water molecules can move in an environment, and those values can determine if there's a cutoff value in those values. Maybe you can more precisely determine if it's a diffusion restriction or not. Because in the chondroid tumors, unfortunately, DWI doesn't give you any advantage because it has very high water content. But in other tissues, these quantitative data could help you theoretically. That's why I asked this question, and I apologize for that.
Thank you so much.
Your second project, the subtitle of that project was a retrospective data analysis. But what kind of result did you find? Or did I miss it? So how much data did you analyze? How? And what was the conclusion?
We have analyzed data that we have collected in our practice at Bajcsy-Zsilinszky Hospital, and we have come to the conclusion, among other minor outcomes, is that in 50% of all cases that seemed to be cholesteatoma-free during microscopic cholesteatoma surgery, we have found additional intraoperative residual cholesteatoma matter in these hard-to-visualize areas.
And can we see these results?
I have only planned on talking about the background because it is not yet a fully finalized project, but I'm hoping on showing you them.
Okay, so but this was then a case series or a validation, or what was your approach to the statistical analysis?
We have retrospectively collected cases that we have operated on, and we looked at the documentation during surgery on those cases when we knew that not only microscopes but endoscopes were also utilized during surgery to some extent, whether it was just looking around in these hard-to-visualize areas or whether it was for actual surgical manipulation, because there's also a staging system. It's not a staging system, it's more of a classification. It's called the Lee-Cohen system for quantifying the extent to which an endoscope was used during surgery. So that was how the entire project started up.
Thank you very much.
What is the incidence of cholesteatoma in Hungary, and how many cases did you have in the study?
In Hungary, in our practice at Bajcsy-Zsilinszky Hospital, if I am correct, we see around 100 cases of cholesteatomas, and congenital cholesteatoma is extremely rare. We see maybe one in 1 year, but these numbers can vary based on which geographical location you're looking at, because in East Asia, congenital cholesteatoma for some reason is much more prevalent.